Welcome back, or welcome to the Developer Tribe for the final episode of Season 2, which promises plenty as my guest and I talk about coaching interventions and coach mentoring. It'll be coming up a year soon since we started, and I want to thank here all of our guests and you for listening, for making this a hugely worthwhile passion project. With that, let's jump into today's episode. My guest today is a football coaching lecturer at the University of South Wales and a League Managers Association ambassador with previous experiences as an academy coach at Bristol Rovers FC, Cardiff City FC, Swansea City FC and Newport County AFC, where he was also academy manager. This only partly reflects the long history in football my guest has, working in player and coach development with national governing bodies and with players and coaches spanning the full spectrum of age and ability. I was fortunate enough to share experiences with him at both USW and Bristol Rovers, so I can attest to his skill and knowledge firsthand. It's a pleasure to welcome Grant Kalahar to the pod.
Good, thanks mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Is South Wales treating you okay?
I'm looking out the window and it snowed today, so it's not treating me great, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, it's another reason why we can't get out in the pitch. Lockdown and now the snow. So, I can't moan too much on, but...
Well, maybe with a little bit of time away from the pitch, that's why we've been able to get you on. Tell us a bit more about the university courses and what your role is in supporting the students' development as football coaches.
So, my role, as you said, I'm a lecturer in football coaching. So, I was originally brought in as a technical demonstrator in football coaching. So, the uni saw they wanted some additional expertise in coaching, helping the students progress through the course. So when I first came in, I was mainly a mentor for football coaching students. That was most of my role. So meetings with them, on a pretty regular basis in the office, being out on a pitch with them, keeping in touch in loads of different ways, we're going to meet for a coffee to chat about, them as a person, how it is and their coaching, and helping them understand different things that go on a training pitch and games, different things like that, and connect the dots to the academic theory, which the uni sort of pioneered in football coaching. So I did that for a couple of years, found there were other areas I could support the different football coaching courses. So I was able to develop a lot of content, for lectures. The uni found that they liked what I did. The student feedback around it, I was helping them learn and prepare for careers as coaches. Helped that. So then I got moved into a lecturing position. So my role now is, I look at football coaching, I look at sports coaching, I look at learning, look to join all of those things together. I examine the game at all levels, constantly as part of my preparation for designing modules and lecture content, setting up assessments which are realistic for potentially a career in football coaching for the student, as well as being, holding the right academic rigour, throughout the whole degree programme for it to be a viable assessment. So that's a lot of what I do. I'm sort of condensing it as much as I can so I don't waffle. So I'm prone to do that, as you know, mate. So yeah, that's a lot of it. I've maintained the mentoring part. Like to, give the opportunity for as holistic a mentoring opportunity as I can for all the students, and that's across all of our football coaching courses. So as you know, at the uni, there's all sorts of sports coaching courses, nursing courses, you name it, they probably do it. Engineering, but my skill set is very much focused on football coaching. I wouldn't pretend to be anything outside of that because I'd fall flat. I'm very much a football coach has learned how to become a lecturer. So I've worked on all of our football coaching courses. We got one which we run in partnership with the English Football League. So all the coaches in education at these different clubs, for example, Bristol Rovers, Bristol City, Newport County, Cardiff City, Lincoln have come on board. You name it, they're there. Portsmouth, for example, Leicester came on board. So all the different clubs up and down the country, they, as you know, mate, they'll host a small cohort of undergraduate students. So I'll design football coaching modules and lectures within it and the assessments for them. I do the same for a course out in America. So a lady called Rachel Murray runs that course. It's in partnership with a soccer coaching company. And again, same thing, I'll look at similar ways to help them develop as coaches through the modules. I'm the sort of central point for the coach education. So they can do coach education up to the A4B license on that course. I'll be their main point of contact and tutor with that as well. And then finally, I work on the on-campus course, not so much this season because I've shifted more of my focus to blended learning for the year, just to enhance some of that delivery and give the more remote students the type of focus and connection our on-campus students have been able to benefit from, down the years. So again, on that football coaching course on campus, I'm still available to it. I've worked on it in the ways we've discussed. But I've got less focus for this season again, just to pay a bit more attention to the guys out in the States and out at the different clubs in the Football League. So we can help them really feel like they're a University of South Wales student and having the same benefits. And on those courses as well, they're not just out remote, it's blended learning rather than online. So again, as you know, mate, they'll come into us for residentials. So on those residentials are pretty intensive, and it's making sure we get the practical assessments done, but also again making sure we're giving them additional live, face-to-face content. And I do like these video call stuff where we'll chat about how they're developing, the on the pitch work, things they're doing in the game, how they're connecting with their players and other coaches. And it's good doing it on video calls and getting to see some of the sessions they can send. But actually getting to see them in person as well, it adds another level of connection. So it's making sure I'm available a lot on them to deliver that. So long answer, sorry, mate. It's
there's a lot going on, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in that EFLT program with yourself and Jay Probert. Loved every minute of those residentials. As you said, they're intensive, they're long, but it was great to meet all the students and to have those conversations. On that EFLT program, certainly when I was involved, it was near enough 150 coaches, I assume probably around 30 or so in the US. You've obviously got your on-campus students as well. That's a huge number to have this individualized approach, to have this approach where you're connecting with every single student to some extent. How do you manage that? How do you manage such a large cohort?
It's tricky, it's time consuming, but it's you just find a way. I've been involved in football coaching and the development of football coaching for a long time, for coaches for a long time, as you know. And one of the things I've always noticed with the coaches that really push towards reaching their full potential, they got this desire to want to be in contact with their different mentors a lot. So it sounds a bit cheesy, I suppose, but I feel like I'm indebted to the people that come on the courses to learn, and I see the benefit of not telling them what to do, but guiding them. Sometimes it might be a bit more instruction based if it's very new to them, but a lot of the time just helping them connect the dots to different things. There's, I always find a way. You know, it is if they want to put that effort in, having this additional contact, which we don't have to do, but I feel is really important because again, I've seen the benefit of it down the years. I always find a way. I mean, like the in-person stuff is the best stuff, but that's never on its own. So the digital stuff, you know, lockdown has probably helped me enhance my capability of that. You know, 10 years ago, if someone had said to me, "Like you'd be doing a podcast through Zoom or something like that, you'd be doing like all this digital work helping people learn," I'd laugh because I couldn't switch a computer on.
Yeah.
But I found different ways, and that digital connection stuff, it's really it's a big part of it. Like I said, I'd probably ramble a little bit now, but the lockdowns really enhanced my use of it. I was using it beforehand, but now I fully understand the power of it and like the working on the blended learning courses. That really opened my eyes up. So about and certainly time efficiency. I mean, one of the things I've always been is organised. So I'll blank off, you know, different slots through the week where whether it was in person when I was on campus or the additional like video call slots on off campus, whatever, I'll blank them times off. And I've set up like an appointment system where people can book an appointment and then we'll spend a bit of time with them. You're not seeing the same coaches every week, but like over a month, say, I've probably had, you know, good contact at the moment, you know, digitally with pretty much every coach on the programs I'm working on, you know. So there's ways, and even though I'm a little bit waffly here, because we've got an open, you know, thing to chat about, and we know each other quite well. I normally keep the slots to 30 minutes, so they gotta prepare well to come into that meeting, knowing what they want to ask, what they want to talk about, what they want some signposting on, what they want some, you know, more direct information on. So it's helping them prepare. So they're prepared well for the slot. We can use the 30-minute slot really well. They can book one every week if they want. You know, sometimes I'll see a student each week for a couple of weeks, and I won't see them for a couple of weeks, which is normal, I find, with different states of development in the coaches. So it's making sure they use the time efficiently, and then if they get into the habit then of, again, you'll understand my, you know, thing about preparation. If they're preparing for every little thing and that's becoming one of their regular behaviours, well, that carries itself over into all their different parts of coaching. So if they understand using time well, then I don't like to use the word habit, but again, if they're picking up one of those key behaviours. So yeah, their preparation of understanding where they are, they're not completely on their own with their learning, but if they're preparing it and they're understanding it, they're taking more ownership of it. So me being organised and giving that thing and asking them to prepare and all that on its own, it helps them. So we can use them slots really efficiently, and then they're starting to take more ownership of their learning, and they're coming back to me then in the follow-up ones with, yeah, this thing was saying, yeah, I can see what you mean now with that. It didn't quite work out this way, but I tried this and this, and that worked. So I can take that forward. You see what I mean? So yeah, there's always loads of ways. Even like the old school, the dog and bone and stuff like that. I don't mind people having a number and have a chat. I don't use Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. I know a lot of people do. I find the moment you're chatting with people on forums like that, people walk around these days wanting to be infuriated by something or insulted by something, or they just want something to argue about. And if it's a conversation with someone's like personal learning, try to keep it between me and them. So you don't want someone else wading in with a load of waffle. And it's like, well, not what we're doing here. So yeah, a closed approach, but a regular connection is the key. To answer your question, mate.
Yeah, it does. And that mentoring process is obviously very important to you. And I was lucky enough to be involved in that with you at the university in a very fleeting part of it before I disappeared to pastures new. But that co-construction of the process with the student, with the coach, it's not just they turn up and it's right, well, what do you want to talk about? And you're missing that 10, 15 minutes or so. It's quite clear they haven't actually reflected at all as to the kind of relationship that they want with you, the mentor-mentee relationship. So asking them to reflect prior, what is it you actually want to talk about? What do you want to learn? What's the roadmap look like for you? I can see exactly how that would then start to accelerate the process. And right at the beginning of what you said, you spoke about, if they're kind of new to something, that you might have to be a bit more instructional. What do you mean by that? Is it kind of a continuum of work?
Yeah, that's one way of explain it, I suppose, as a continuum. There's something I found. Again, I haven't done any rigorous research on it. It's just my experience. It's a tacit thing, right? What I found with coaching young players is, once again, a soapbox. This term, let the game be the teacher. I'm just not a fan at all, because there was a saying. It's not one of my sayings. Some people think it is, but it's not. I heard someone say it. It was brilliant. They said, the game's the classroom. The coach is still the teacher. It was one of the English FA tutors, one of the more senior ones, a couple of years back, and I thought that's brilliant, that, because if I got no concept of it, no understanding of it, if I'm just chucked into, there you go, you can figure that problem out yourself, I think I'm being set up for a fall. Because if something's very new to me and I haven't got the tools to fix it, how can I see what the problem is? How can I work towards solving it? I need some tools to be given to me first. So similar, not exactly the same, but a similar thing with developing or supporting the development of coaches. It's one of the things I'm keen to reflect on my stuff. I'm trying to stop saying I develop coaches. I don't. I support their development. I don't develop players. I support their development. But that's another thing. But coming back to your point, that if it's very new, my first port of call is to give it some sort of foundation. So if we looked at it as like a pyramid, building your understanding. But if you've got that really wide base at the bottom, which reading the work of a number of different authors, is often called a knowledge bank. So that knowledge, if you can deliver that explicitly, very instructional. This is how this works. I say that works, and you build that really strong base. The coach or the player, then they're given some tools to work with, and it'd be that really explicit instruction to help them build the knowledge. Not really the understanding at this point, just the knowledge of it, and nuts and bolts. Then I look, there's another layer above where all these explicit instructional things they've been given, they can go into a zone where they're then experimenting with them and reflecting on the use of them. So if I said you to use, again, one of my big areas is looking at interventions. One of the things we do on a course is in year one, we'll look at lots of different types of interventions and be very explicit about what they are and how to use them. Well, the next challenge then is, once you know what they are, you've got the nuts and bolts, how are you going to use them? And when you use them, what was the effect? Was it positive? Was it negative? Why? Really getting to that thought about it. how did it affect each dimension of practice, or each corner or pillar, or whatever people want to call them? And then when you're really reflecting on that and you're genuinely looking at the effect of it, well, that's when you can start to move into, after support with mentors and reflection yourself, into that sort of top end of the pyramid. Like, well, that's when you're into, like, well, now I can adapt it. So you're helping them through that journey. So early on, you might look at some really explicit, instructional support for putting things together, then allow that experimentation and reflection, and that there's more open dialogue. Oh, this happened when I done this happened when I did this, blah, 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 that. Great, so what's the further effect of that? And you focus the conversation here, and then can they go and work on it again and keep chatting? Well, that's when they start to really develop it, and it becomes more implicit then at the top of it. So again, intervention strategies, myself, John Jones, Brendan Cropley, we've been doing some research on that for a couple of years, and some of the elite coaches been lucky enough to research their practice with. You can see that they've got a plan for, I'm going to do this, this, and this, especially since different periodization models have become common practice in football coaching. I'm going to intervene this way and that way and that way. And a lot of the time, their explanation of how they're planning to use different interventions across a different day of the week is pretty close to what we find when we do the research of it, the analysis of it. But it won't always be bang on, because football coaching doesn't work like that, does it? It's not an exact science. But again, that tacit understanding of when they've got the level I just call adapting it, well, you can almost chat with them and pinpoint, well, okay, well, you were looking to use interventions that didn't stop play on this day of the week. And you stuck that pretty much most of the time. Why did you stop the year? Why didn't you wait to the end of the block? Why did you think, well, I'm going to use freeze coaching year, a type of intervention, to randomly stop it when you wanted all these different things? And they can explain exactly why. And it's not grasping for things. They know why. And they can think, yeah, well, I've done that because of this. Because in that strategy, like anything in football, you've got a plan, and you're going to be informed when to work towards your plan. But sometimes you've got to come away from that plan. And if you know why, then you're right. So I find it early on being more instructional when they don't know. They'll know something, but not the fuller picture. It gives a good platform to then go through the other stages to get towards adapting. So if we ask them, again, be the teacher, whether it's coach or player, whatever, on day one, go on and go and solve that, I don't think they're ever going to get there. I haven't seen it, but I have seen people going through something like the process I'm explaining. So that's one of my reasons for it might be more instructional early on. And like, one of the caveats to it, I don't know if I use the right word there, apologies for that if I haven't, but it's you've got to get to know them really well, because they might know more than you think. They might not know as much as you think. So again, one of my colleagues would probably go nuts if I use the word trial and error, but I wouldn't want to call it that. But with a player and with a coach early on, it's very much a case of, well, building that relationship of trust. Help them understand, look, I'm in your corner here. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to pick on, oh, you don't know that. Why don't you know that? I just want you to know I'm here to help. And whatever way I can help you, I'll do it that way. You build that level of trust, and then you start chatting to them and take a bit of an interest in them. See them as a human being rather than a number. Then you can start to pick up, well, okay, chat we had tonight there. I'm not judging this coach, but they clearly haven't got a lot of understanding in this area. So that's where I'm going to be more instructional. actually this bit they seem to get. So I might just think, well, I don't really need to instruct them and patronise them here, or make them, think they're wrong. It's a case, well, something about that. This is a good thing about coaching. When you're a coach, you tend to be at least a late teenager, don't you? Normally older than that. Yeah. So it's a case of people of that age, they got life experiences, and they got experiences in the game and different things like that. So they come into you with things already in the bank. So it's finding out what they are. Okay, what you got in the bank here, they got that bit in the knowledge. Well, what can you now do with that to form maybe one of the core things of your coaching philosophy? Yeah, how can you push it further? So you're always looking at, their knowledge bank ain't going to be like a flat line. It's going to be jagged up and down. So really getting a picture of them and like going straying slightly into players now. Players are like that as well, aren't they? You would have seen players where, well, they're really good at that. They really get that. There's a big gap in their understanding or capacity here. And you're never using like a blueprint of, right, with the under nines, they're all going to be at this level for this, all that, no chance. Nines, 10s, 11s, 12s, 18s, whatever, senior players, they're all different levels of everything. So that when people say about, I know my players, I know my mentees, stuff like that, for me, one of the things is, right, do I really know them? Am I honest enough for myself to think, have I put that effort into getting to know you well there? And that's really this thing. I'm always trying to open up times to see people, and you are spinning plates, but it's like a privileged position you're in. I mean, there's a couple of people throughout my career who've left, a big impression. I thought one of them, Dick Bates, and he helped me understand not just levels of detail. I thought I knew detail. When I met Dick, I realised I know nothing. He upped my game even more there, and the stuff I learned there was brilliant. But one of the other things with Dick was helping you understand that you're in a privileged position, helping someone learn the game as a player or a coach. You really are in a privileged position. So, I felt like I was lucky to do these things. But again, when you bring it to life that way, it completely, took me to, when I say different level, I don't mean in a big time way. I know it also don't, but just made me focus even more further on that level of, right, I really am in a position here where I'm entrusted to support the development of coaches and players. So I really will try to get to know them so I can really inform a plan for their development. And it does need to be bespoke. One of the benefits as well you got with coaches is there's no set time on when they got to hit a certain, again, don't use the word competency, but it's a simple one to get the point across, innit? There's no set thing. You haven't got this level of competency within this time because you're not going to get released then. We're young players, there's more pressure on it. With coaches, you've got a long time. And like, some of the people you'll be aware of, and some of the students, whether it's from my previous life, previous as a coach educator, or what I am now as a lecturer, it's not a case of, well, that's the end of your degree, that's the end of your coach head course, or have one of them, I'm not interested anymore. You keep working with them long term, and when you've, been supporting a coach or a player really long term, certainly coaches, again, I think it goes to a different level. I mean, the privilege thing is, I don't like name dropping, as you know, I'd never do that, but there's people working at really high levels of football that I've worked with in the past supporting them. We're still very much in contact now. Oh, how are you, Grant? Blah, blah, blah. How's this going? But have a bit of a chat and catch up on things. And you get into the conversation of, how's this happening? How you doing with this? You train? How's these things? And you get into you're almost a soundboard for them, and you're helping them get through their process of, well, this is how we're going to approach this, whether it's with a environment or whether it's with a particular thing in a training session or a game. So yeah, and that's, there's that level, but also, further down at younger players or grassroots, similar thing here. If you connect with them and you take the interest in them to really out there learning, you do our long term, you can really, really get into the nitty gritty of supporting the development. And one of the things I like, again, as you know, you can be really honest without having to be confrontational or disrespectful. You can be really honest. You say, well, I don't think you're on the right track yet. I think you need to look at yourself,
And yeah, you cannot do that until you have that relationship with them, once you've had the opportunity to develop that trust and rapport. And I mean, look, I've been fortunate enough to work with you, so I know that you take care and spend that time. There's obviously a huge amount to unpack from what you've just told us there. But the important part for me would be, you spoke again about it being more instructional, perhaps when the knowledge base isn't quite there with coaches or with players. And then the context by which you can be more instructional. If you just step straight in and you have some instructional behaviors, but you haven't got a relationship with that person, they're probably not going to take it on board, or worse. So what does instructional look like if we base it on, okay, we've had some time with this coach or this player, and I do want to get on to talking about working with players. We've had some time with this player, we've developed a rapport, we've identified a knowledge gap, either co-constructed or perhaps you as the developer. What does instructional intervention in that way look like? Because I think most people, as soon as you say instructional, they think in terms of working with players. I'm telling them what to do. I've got the joystick out. I'm doing it for them, essentially. And of course, that's not, I assume, that's not what you mean.
No, not quite. No, I mean, if we look at it from a coach and a player point at the same time, just to be efficient. If we look at helping a player and a coach develop an understanding of, for example, let's look at a modern game, when to get in a pocket. You want to get someone between air units in a pocket space to turn to play ball, for example. Like Bruno Fernandes, unbelievable at that. Just as an example here, which would be current. So if he was working with a coach, it'd be a case of, right, well, perhaps you practice, for you to have that initial layer of instruction. It'd be going towards a goal. You'd be using the area of the pitch you're going to need. So, some people call it pitch geography and all that sort of stuff. You got the players in their roles. So it's very structured. And then say you're up, for example, up against mannequins, which some people don't like, but I think everything we see as coaches has got a place. And it's making people understand when to use these different things. So it could be a case for the coach, right? Well, again, let's keep it instructional and straightforward. Then there's a row of 4 mannequins is a back 4, row of 4 mannequins is a midfield 4, a row of 2 mannequins is a front 2, 4-4-2. You got a yellow mannequin and a goal, which is a goalie. You got your team set up, say you're a 4-2-3-1, and you got all your moving parts on the pitch. It could be a case of, right, well, we're going to go through a sequential way, step by step, almost freeze frame, to get the ball to that player in that pocket. So it could be a case of, right, well, if I go through it with them on a tactics board, then before, well, say the central defender is going to get the ball. When the central defender receives and opens up to play forward, their body's pointing forward. They're, pointing at that gap between the left midfield of the opposition and the central one. They can see, they can play the ball into that space. But that's when you can tell, for example, your winger in your 4-2-3-1. That's when you start your run to get in that pocket. And when you get there, making sure you're seeing the corner flag off your right shoulder, the one in that corner away from you, and the one back towards where your left back is. So this gap, they're being put into, they're being instructed to go into that pocket at that time, that way. So we've put those couple of things together. So they got to trigger a cue when to go there. They've been told how to go in there with their body shape. So they got the opportunity to scan things while going forward. So that could be, for example, an early instruction. So you're helping the coach to understand the timing of how to do it. Now, what we've done really with that is open up a couple of little parts of the big puzzle. We've given that little bit of a foundation as a starter for 10. So from a player's point of view, again, the coach can go through the same thing with the player. If the player hasn't got any knowledge of how to use pockets, perhaps they're young, well, they're giving them a start. So we're not just jumping in what might be the last question. When do you go in that pocket? I don't know. What do you mean when? Yeah, obviously I've seen that happen. The coach there has got an understanding of the things we might be looking for. The player has got a foundation, some explicit thing to give them that foundation to go in. So that could be the beginning. Now, if they're better at it and you know that, or if it's that progression through this developmental roadmap, you described it as a good word. Well, it could be a case of then, well, they got that, but it might not, even though it's a starter, it might not be exactly when. So it could be more of a question now, but maybe an open guided question. Well, all right, you're saying to the coach, the winger wants to use that pocket. Okay, yeah. If the centre back, their body's close to that space, their shoulders pointing out, they haven't really scanned a look at it. They're looking the other way. They're probably going to go back into the midfield or back to the other centre back. They haven't seen it. Do you want the winger going in then? No, probably be a waste of movement, wouldn't it? We might be looking again in a minute. I'm not showing the opposition fullback where I'm going to go in at this point. So now they're starting to think a little bit more. Well, rather than going at that point and thinking, well, okay, if he's opened up and you can see that, might that be the time? Yeah, that would be the time because of this. Okay, so when the winger gets in there, do you want 2 feet pointing at the ball? Do you want one foot further back than the other? And why? Well, I don't think 2 feet pointing at the ball is looking on goal then. It takes longer to turn. So you're guiding them towards a potential solution, but you're not giving everything. So I term it, some people might disagree, but I term it as open guided questioning. It's certainly guiding. I mean, if they're further down the line, again, for the player, the coach, it could be a case of, well, if they are at that time and all that, well, all right, we got an idea of when we want to arrive in that pocket, but we don't want to stand still in it, right? If Tim's got quick feet, the centre back, and he can manipulate that ball fast, or if Grant's feet are slower and if he's on that side, well, what's the difference now? Oh, right, well, if Tim can manipulate it faster, I can probably go in at a different time. If Grant's feet are slower, which they are, I might have to wait a little bit later to go in. So I might have to wait for his foot to just come back. So again, I'm thinking, and then once you understand these things, that's when you can probably go do the last question. When do you want to go into that space? Or when do you want your winger to go in that space? So you can structure it that way. So earlier on, it might be that type of instruction. Later on, it can be the different types of questions. The more open it is, the probably more understanding the coach or the player guy in that moment of the game. There's other things you can bring to play in. It could be a case of, right, well, again, if I know you and your experience, Tim, I know Tim knows about this and this, you're going to win in our pocket. We're going to do it in a large-sided game. So there's a full match tempo. We know it's going to be difficult to get in there. I know Tim can help the players to get the players in it. So it could be before the session. I can meet you a couple of hours before, what are we doing in training today? And Tim, I come in for the day to help you with it on the pitch mentoring rather than just all the other stuff we do. Because on the pitch mentoring is only one part of it, as you know. In what the case, in the training session, well, what are you looking to do today, Tim? Well, I got this winger. who normally plays on the left. He's reluctant to use his left foot though. He's a right footer. He normally tucks in from our side, but we want to open his game up. We want to understand sometimes he can come in, but sometimes he got to go out. Well, we're flipping him onto the other side of the pitch, so when he comes in, which he likes doing, he got to use that left foot a bit more. Because if the fullback comes to get pressure on him, well, that's a safe foot. I can still receive it and keep the fullback off me, for example, and receive with that foot, get your arm out and keep driving in. So the thing that player likes doing, he can still do, but he's challenging our weaker foot. Oh, great. So what are you going to do to encourage him to go on the outside on his strong foot then? And then it's really over to you then, isn't it? What are you going to do? And then we can chat about it and all of that. And it's just one part of it. So again, the player stuff, the learning process, I'm not saying it's the only way, it's the way, is very similar there, isn't it? Might be more instruction, might be less instruction, the more you know about them. Well, actually getting on the outside of that fullback, you don't really want to do as much. So that we get thinking into, chucking a question at you now, Tim. If that player has got a bit of a shaky relationship with you and you want them to do something they don't really like doing and they don't want everyone to know they're not quite getting it right, how are you going to intervene with that player? How are you going to help them do it? So again, then you're thinking, well, all right, well, what interventions have I got at my disposal? That connection with a player, the social thing, you got to be thinking, well, if it's public, under the microscope, look, you can't do that. Back like you said earlier, the relationship at that point ain't strong enough to do that. So then you might be thinking, well, I'm going to position myself as a coach out in this area. And when he's putting, or he or she's putting the effort into doing that, you might just pull them over and really specifically praise the process of doing it. So we're helping them get into more of a mastery climate in their mind rather than an ego-driven one. They want to work it again. I can see your effort was fantastic with doing that. The way you opened your hip there to get the first touch past the fullback, I thought that was brilliant. You did that really well, mate. There's other bits you can sharpen up. Maybe when you're doing it, that left arm, because you're not used to this, you get out a bit higher now, mate. Then if he or she gets a bit closer, you can sort of swat them off and keep the momentum of your run going forward. Remember, you're on your strong foot. So, what people call it, the BS sandwich, I suppose, isn't it? But you might be pulling to the side a little bit, giving them it that way, so you've given them a little bit of support to begin with,
Yeah, finding those different ways to intervene, it's such the art of what we do. And then if we're working with coaches, it's giving them the agency to announce their own problems. You might know what they are and you're guiding them to certain revelations, but essentially getting them to announce it themselves. And okay, now that you understand your issues or problems you are facing, how are we going to do that? And that reminds me of a player at Rovers that I had who didn't want that highlighting, as you were saying, about a coach, but in this case a player. He did not want direct instruction in any form, whether that was in front of other people or face-to-face one-to-one. He just didn't want it. So I had to find a way to still work with this player, and I ended up using post-it notes. And it was a case of I'd be giving a team instructions, sometimes totally fabricated, because I just needed to get time in with this player. And I'd hand him a post-it note, and as I walked past, no announcement, not attention drawn to it, I know he'll read the information and get on with it. By the end of a 6-month period, that had extended to now the post-it note was about him and his best mate, so now he has to interpret that communication and pass it on. Then the post-it notes extended to unit, small group information. Can you start to communicate that? By the end of the season, that player, on the last day of me being at the club, and I definitely used the fact that I was leaving to add some motivation here, I said to him, is there any chance you'd lead the team talk today? And he did it, and it was brilliant. Had I asked him to do that at the very beginning, not a chance. and potentially would have put his progression in this area back another 6 months. But I loved what you were saying about not solving the problem, using that open and guided questioning. I was on a podcast some time ago now talking about a term, skillful neglect, that I interpret as we're not abdicating our responsibility as a coach, but there are things we are choosing not to directly address, so that the players are empowered and take ownership of their learning themselves. Does that resonate with what you were saying?
Oh, 100%, mate. Massively. Yeah, it's really interesting. And you bring another thing to mind. It's a great point you raise. Is that bit of autonomy, the feeling like they're in control of it. If we look at like self-determination theory, well, that's one of the cores, isn't it? You got to feel like, well, yeah, I got some power. I got a say in this, and if you got a say in it, you're more motivated to do it. So yeah, I think you bang on, mate. It's a really good observation. Something I'll probably nickname there.
Yeah, please do. Look, Grant, thank you so much. I feel like we could talk for many hours, and there's loads I would want to unpack more with you, but perhaps we'll save that for another time. One last question for you. If you could have an audience with just one person, who would that be?
If I could spend another hour or two in a company of Dick Bate, it'd be Dick Bate. 100%.
What is it that you would want to ask him?
How am I doing?
Sure. Yeah.
And because of the relationship I had with him, like he had with everybody that had the pleasure of working with him, and his knowledge, what could I do better? How could I do better at that? They'd be the things.
I actually met Dick Bate when I was working as a bartender at Cardiff City Stadium, and I was working at a VIP part, and he came wandering through, and I've gone a little bit starstruck because I know who he is. My colleagues don't know him from Adam, so I'm angling for a way to speak to him, and when I got a chance, he was a gentleman. He gave me time, even though he was trying to watch the game. So I'd echo what you've said. If you're not aware of him yet, there's sessions available on YouTube. You can watch him at work. Grant, thanks again. Where would it be best for people to reach you and to find out more about what you're doing?
I'm on LinkedIn, but my email address is probably the easiest way to get hold of me these days. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll put that in the description, and just leaves me to say, welcome to the tribe.
Tim, thanks very much.
That's it for episode 12 and for season 2 of the Developer Tribe. My thanks to Grant for rounding the season off with some really useful reflections for us to take away. And my thanks again to all the guests that have made this season what it is. We'll take a break for a while before season 3 comes around, but do watch out for some announcements about the Developer Tribe platform and some new developments that I'm really excited to share with you soon. In the meantime, do let us know what your favourite moments of the season were, and take the opportunity to reach out to the speakers that you resonated with most. Until next season, thanks for being here, however you got here. See you again soon.